Alright guys, I'm back rambling my way through why I'm distressed about the Sadducees. I'm trying to make a case for it. The last two rambly videos, I waded my way through some history. The last one I was talking more about the time of Jesus and the Galilee, which is really the build-up, the culmination of the 70 AD, when we're looking at as the Sadducees still refusing to unite with the rest of their people and kind of going down with the ship, if you will. And then at the end of the last video, I brought up the resurrection. So why did the Sadducees not believe in the resurrection of the dead? And I know what you're thinking, because you're like, well, the Old Testament, there's quite a few references. Like, what about the dry bones? It's like at the top of my head. It seems like there's a lot of these ideas of us coming back. And that's really what salvation would have been for the Jews at that time, the Pharisees at that time. They would have seen resurrection as, okay, this is the Messiah's coming. I always want to say coming back, but they would assume it's the first time, right? Messiah's coming, he's setting up his kingdom, and all these prophets throughout the Old Testament have promised us that we'd have a place in this kingdom. Abraham's going to come back. Everyone's going to come back that believed through faith. They would be resurrected on the day of the Lord. And we could have different eschatology at that point, but ultimately, and I'm sure they did as well at different debates, but the belief in the resurrection. So here comes these Sadducees who don't believe in that. They don't believe in that. Why? And you know what I know, that I'm going to say the priesthood again, because I've been saying it over and over again in these videos. But the priesthood, but the priesthood, the priesthood. But it is. And I feel they believe that through Alexander Jannaeus and the Maccabees themselves, the setting up of the Hasmonean kingdom, all the prophecies, we're talking about this destruction of the temple, but there's going to be this new kingdom. And I believe that they feel they set up this kingdom. And you're probably wondering, well, it got destroyed. The temple got destroyed in 70 AD. They just think that they still believe in God, right? They believe in God. They think Messiah is going to be one of them. It's going to be the king priest. It's still a man, right? And they're half right. It's a man. And I think Alexander Jannaeus was a forerunner of trying to be, because where do we have another king priest, right? And I talked about in the last video about how he conquered, I always say Idumea, but I don't know how you pronounce that. Idumea, southern Judea, subjugated them, made them learn Torah, conquered a lot of land. And that built into Herod the Great, even conquering a lot of... There's a reason the Arabs at 70 AD, or mostly the Roman conscripts under Titus, destroyed the temple. They remember what Herod the Great did. He conquered along of the, it would have been the Nabateans area. Carved out a lot of the land. Would have been a larger kingdom. I think I talked about some of this in the first video. Larger kingdom than even King David or Solomon would have had. He's the reason he was Herod the Great. He built a lot of stuff. But he also did a lot of stuff. I'm sure a lot of people thought, hey, is this guy the Messiah? Is this the millennial reign? We don't have really that idea today. I think some people are starting to get that. Oh, 1948 Israel. They're back in the land. And maybe they're going to build a temple again. And wait, it's starting to look like the days of Alexander Jannaeus. It's starting to look like the days of Herod the Great. and maybe they'll do it right this time. So whether these Sadducees are believing in like reincarnation, it's like you just keep doing it till you get it right. It's like you're coming back, but it's not a resurrection. It's just you got to keep doing it till you get it right. And we see this a lot in Judaism today. Not all of them believe in reincarnation. I'm surprised that a lot of Jews do believe in it. So it might be surprising that you're hearing about this now for me. But there's a few teachers I like to follow just to catch up on them, see what they're doing, see what they're talking about. I like a lot of what they talk about. At the end of the day, you're getting a little microscopic view into the Judean mindset, and it's morphed. It's morphed from what it was. Pharisaical thought, very close to what Jesus taught and believed, what the Torah and Tanakh teaches. But so much of like the Mishnah and the Talmudic and all these other things that get built on there distort. And I believe we're still seeing this Sadducean mindset of, and this rabbi I follow, Rabbi Zitron, will talk about, you can find him on YouTube, he talks about, if every Jew, just kept Shabbat, kept Sabbath, Messiah would come back. He's just waiting for us to get it right. That's their belief system. And I'm sure there's others who believe, well, we got to set up the temple, we gotta create our own Messiah almost. And it's very Luciferian, and I know that's a little weird, but it's almost what they're building into. If we look at the history of the Jews beyond 70 AD, we have this mode of operation, how they would infiltrate a country, how they would work towards gaining power, not by politically. They're never trying to put somebody in office. They're never trying to have the puppet, right? Because let's face it, today in America, the president is a puppet. He pretends he has power. I think it's all a big game. The more I vote, I try. But I think a lot of it is a game. A lot of it is a show of force. We got this left and we got this right, and it's all to distract us. And I think a lot of, when we think about the media, who's in control? It's the Jews, right? And that sounds very anti-Semitic. There's different types of Jews. Remember, there's different types of Jews at Jesus' time. We have the Pharisees and we have the Sadducees. So we have these. This guy called Owen Benjamin I like to watch. He calls them Juicifarians. I think it's a good name. It's a little mean, but they're the elite. They're running the media. They're running the countries. They're forming this one world empire. They're trying to put themselves at the top. And that's Zionism in a bad way. Like, we have Zionism today as, because what was Zion to the Pharisees, right? Let's contrast that. It's a good point. Zion, Pharisees, what do they think it was? Well, they thought it was this city from heaven, right? The New Jerusalem, the mountain of the Lord. Because it's clear to me after rereading, and this wasn't always clear to me, especially when you look at Revelation, it's a good piece and it's only the capstone to prophecy if you have the foundation of all the other prophets. You need to read Isaiah, you need to read, not just Daniel, okay? You need Zechariah, you need all of them to have that good foundation, that layer, and then put the capstone of Revelation on, and you're seeing a good picture of the New Jerusalem and Messiah. That's what they believe. So there's going to be a destruction, a laying to waste. Zechariah is very clear about this. Zechariah is a very cool book because we have Zechariah having all these visions at the start, and then he talks a lot about the millennial reign. And there's a lot of verses talking about Jerusalem will be laid waste, flat, and then we have the mountain of the Lord. And it's almost like these are AKAs, because I thought Jerusalem was the mountain of the Lord. But we could see the subtle differences between Jerusalem now, well, now it's really bad, but even before, when there was an actual temple, showing there would be a destruction. And that full destruction, because a lot of preterists will make this argument that was in 70 AD. But we don't see it. It's not been flattened out. It hasn't been made a plain. The reason it's being made a plain is it's a foundation for the New Jerusalem to come down, set, be a kingdom. That's what the Pharisees, I believe believed, as far as the resurrection, that city would come back. We read, Thessalonians about like this harpaxo, this catching up, and then we have the resurrection of the dead. It's all happening on the day of the Lord. I think it's very clear that that's when the resurrection takes place. Because outside the New Testament, do we have a lot of resurrection references? There's enough, but maybe not enough. And that's where the Sadducees kind of slipped in sneakily and created their own gospel, right? Because the gospel is the good news, not just the New Testament. There was a gospel, even Jesus said his gospel. He's talking about his gospel. It's not the books that weren't written yet. It was the books of the Old Testament was the gospel. It's the good news of the Lord. There's a God. He loves you. He wants to have a relationship with you, and he's coming back to dwell with you. It's how we get there. So if we have this frame, this mindset that we are to set up this kingdom, we are to go and conquer Israel and clear out all the baddies and set up this temple and get everything going. I mean, that's probably where we're headed. And there isn't a lot of Jews, I'll be honest, there isn't a lot of Jews that have this mindset. There's not a ton that want to get sacrifices going again. They want to get the temple system going again because they think that age is done with. They think they do it through good works and Torah keeping. This is how we sacrifice now, is through giving to the poor, emunah, which is your faith. Not just believing God, but like trusting and believing. It's, this deeper level. And a lot of that is really good teachings, and I like a lot of those teachings from the rabbis. But we do know that sacrifice will return. And I think that's the point they're missing. I think it's pretty clear in the scriptures that we will see it, and we'll see it in the millennial reign. I'm almost half convinced we'll see it post-millennial reign. And that's a whole other rabbit trail, but it's all coming back to a picture of the garden. And I think there were sacrifices in the garden even before man sinned. And I don't think there'll be sacrifices continuing. So I think we'll still have a body that eats food, that can do labor. It's just not going to be work like we've always thought it will be. Because think about it, labor could be fun. Playing sports is fun. Building, constructing is fun. Growing things is fun. That's all the things we love about life. And then they're like, well, what are we going to do? We're just going to float on clouds and worship God all day? It's because that's so different from the garden. And we think, well, now it's going to be this new thing that far surpasses the garden. And I think it will, but I think a lot of it is going to be similar. It's like life now, just better, perfected. It's like we have the heart of flesh, or the heart of stone, where we needed the stone, we needed it written down, just so we could try to keep it. And we're like, I don't understand it. Why do I gotta keep this? It makes no sense. The more you do it, you start to get the spirit of it. That's a lot of what Paul talks about in the New Testament, in Galatians, the spirit of the law. It's like, you're not subject to the law if you got the spirit. He's not saying the law's done away with. He just said your spirit, and you're so wise, and you're closer to knowing God's heart, that you're keeping the law without even having to know what the law is, right? But it starts with a lot of people obedience to Torah. Understanding comes, knowing God's heart, and eventually, once we're resurrected and glorified, we get that heart of flesh. So I don't think we have that heart of flesh now, right? We're not glorified. We're not walking through walls. I mean, but the only example we have is Jesus, and he's eating with disciples. He still is, looks familiar. You know, they didn't recognize him at first, but familiar enough. He has scars still. A remnant of what he used to be. That's why I don't really buy the whole reincarnation thing. Because Jesus wasn't reincarnated into another body. He was glorified. So as far as we know, he might have a similar body up in heaven right now, acting as high priest. And I used to go on this thing where I'd be like, oh, man doesn't go to heaven, but obviously Jesus is a man, he went to heaven. So there might be others that are there, that are preparing the way, dwelling in the New Jerusalem, getting it set. But I think mostly it's angels that are his priests in the heavenly tabernacle. Most people, I believe, are still in Sheol, awaiting resurrection. Because remember, it all goes back to resurrection. Because that's what the Jews believe is salvation, right? It's like, you don't go to heaven. Because we could just go to heaven. Like, why do we need the millennial reign? Why do we need to come back to earth? Why does it need to be new earth? Why does there need to be judgment? If you already get golden ticket to heaven, it's over and done with. You don't need a resurrection. Why do you need a resurrection? You're already in heaven. What is the point of the resurrection? Right? We don't talk enough about the resurrection. Then you're like, whoa, wait a minute. We're already in heaven. We're gonna get resurrected with our heavenly bodies into earthly bodies? Resurrection from heaven? Riddle me that, Batman. All right, I'm home. I'll end with that confusing statement. And I'm enjoying these just ramblings, nothing prepared, just thoughts out loud. But if you got any thoughts yourself, leave it in the comments.